Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. I guess you would say this person has one of my favorite podcasts in the whole wide world, because it is. And I'm not just being nice because he's on the phone with me. This podcaster has a show called The Relaunch Show. So without further ado, I'm going to let Joel take it away.
Oh, Wayne, this is so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on Butterflies today. And gosh, we got so close to having the show, doing the recording a few weeks ago, and then we had to reschedule. So thank you for your patience with me, and I have been looking forward.
Well, you're welcome.
I've been looking forward to being here.
You're welcome. Now, my first question, as I said in the intro, it's your podcast is one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm not just being nice, by the way. Why did you start doing that podcast?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. And my goodness, I started in traditional radio 28 years ago, and since then, just broadcasting and the spoken word has gotten into my bloodstream, and it's something that I just can't get away from. And, I wanted to create a show, talking about my current show, Relaunch, that could really help people find hope, find inspiration, and find the courage to relaunch a part of their own life. And that could be relaunching a piece of their personal life, or that could be relaunching a piece of their professional life, or sometimes both at the same time. And we interview and we talk with guests that are not afraid of being transparent and just sharing some of the struggles and the hang-ups that they've been through. And they also talk about how they were able to use that experience to act as a springboard to take them into that next season of life. I felt that there needed to be a show that did that. And Relaunch was born about not quite 3 years ago.
And may I ask the favorite child question? Who has been your favorite interview you have done?
Wow. We have 558 episodes with this current show, so it's really hard when to zero it in. But I'll give you, can I give you the top maybe three? Would that be okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, one of my absolute favorite interviews was with Jack Canfield. And if that name kind of sounds familiar, it's because he was one of the authors of the original Chicken Soup for the Soul book, and then later book series. And that book series has sold 500 million copies, so it's done well. But Jack was so gracious to come onto the show, and he shared his relaunch, and he talked about how he went through a divorce, how he ended up losing everything in his divorce except for his grit and his bootstraps. And he pulled himself up by them, and he was able to then, move on and launch Chicken Soup and the Success Principles and many other projects. So Jack Canfield is definitely one of them. Darren Hardy is another one. He is the former publisher of Success Magazine. Huge fan of Darren, and that was a very powerful interview. And then I would say, gosh, there's so many to choose from, but Winnie Anderson is a woman that I had on the show. Gosh, it's probably been a year and a half, maybe even 2 years ago, and she went through some pretty traumatic brain injury accidents and situations. And she just pretty much pulled back the covers in her own life and shared how she struggled through those circumstances and conditions, and then how she was able to rebuild her business and her life in spite of what she's been through. And really, what it comes down to, Wynn, is your perspective. And when you see the things that may have happened to you as things that also happened for you, that's the difference maker.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I'm now going through 2 relaunches in my own life.
Goodness.
And I feel like I'm going to get through one of them, and the other one I'll definitely get through. And I just need to decide next week how I'm going to do one of them. One of them is the pieces are falling into place, but I'm just going to have to decide how to do it. And
what are the relaunches? If you don't mind me asking, I appreciate that you're interviewing me, but I'm curious about what's going on with you.
I will tell you. One, I thought I was going to have back surgery, which is not going to happen. Thank God.
Good. Yes, absolutely.
Because back surgery is not fun for anyone. And the second one is I am going back to school to get a fashion journalism degree.
Yay! Now what? Okay,
Yay.
no. Now what? And I promise you, I won't grill you with many more questions. There might be a few more, but so what's the motivation? When for you going back to school to maybe pursue this degree? Not maybe, but to pursue this degree.
To pursue this degree. Because I love public speaking and I love podcasting. And so I thought, hey, why not get a degree in it? Why not get a degree so I can be a better public speaker? Why, even though it's in fashion journalism, I'm going to use the fashion journalism as a springboard for my podcast.
Great. That is fantastic, Wynn. Let me be the first to congratulate you on the decision.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And there's nothing more powerful than a woman that knows, a person, I should say, that knows their direction.
Yeah, because I thought about it during my health scare, and unfortunately, the college that I was going to didn't offer the journalism degree, so I thought, hey, why not transfer, and why not get a journalism degree? Plus, I put myself on medical leave, thinking my medical leave was going to be a little bit more severe. In the meantime, they kind of made me leave in the process of me being on medical leave. So I thought, hey, this is a sign that I need to pursue my dream and I need to be a better podcaster, because if I'm going to be speaking, if I'm going to keep a podcast going, you know this, you know this just as much as I do, that the technology is changing 1,000 miles a minute.
Yep.
Yep. He says, yep. So, Joel, what is your favorite podcast that you listen to? And please don't tell me you don't listen to podcasts.
Okay. So the correct answer would be, of course, Butterflies of Wisdom.
You're being nice. You're being nice. You're being nice.
Well, a podcaster was interviewing me the other day and asked me that same question, and I didn't say her podcast. And I kind of got scolded a little bit and I didn't want you to scold me.
No. Pick any podcast you want.
No, I know.
Would be butterflies of wisdom. No, that goes to my audience too. When I ask that question, I'm not expecting you guys to be nice to me, although the favorite answer would be butterflies of wisdom. That's a very nice answer. I'll take that. But I'm talking about any podcast, Joel.
Sure. No, when we're friends, so I was just giving you a little bit of a hard time, but
Yes.
thanks for playing with me on that. You know what? There's a few that I listen to. I listen to The Wealthy Speaker, and you know if you have a speaking in your blood like I do, and I do a lot of speaking. Write that down, Wealthy Speaker. That's by my good friend Jane Atkinson. Does that podcast? That's a good one. Steal the Show. That is another killer podcast for speakers or aspiring speakers. Now, for folks that just like a good message, not necessarily that tailored to speakers, I love 48 Days to the Work You Love. Just search 48 Days in your iTunes or in your podcast directory. And Dan Miller, longtime friend and mentor, is the host of that show. And those are three that I listen to frequently. And I do listen to a lot of podcasts because, like you, I'm kind of addicted to them.
Yes. And like me, we have to get good at our craft, even though you were in radio for so many years. And of course, that is no longer on the scene. Now they have XM radio, which you can find all over the planet. And so the local radio stations unfortunately are dying off.
Yep.
And so what made you leave radio to go to your passion of podcasting?
Sure. Wow, that's another wonderful question, Wen. So thank you for asking. In 96, 97, I walked away from traditional radio, and here's why. Because I saw the writing on the wall, and I saw, as did my peers that I worked with, we were on-air people, that radio was getting ready to be overhauled. And it may or may not come out pretty. And that was, it had everyone shaking in their boots, including me, including my boss, because he didn't know what was going to happen. Of course, he wanted to keep his team together, but, he didn't control everything. And on Christmas Eve, 1996, I remember exactly when it was now, I walked away. I had my last on-air shift at that particular radio station. It was a top 40 radio station. It was the third one that I worked at. And that was it. Now, my love for broadcasting got stronger. You're a podcaster like me, so it gets down deep under your skin, and it's something that you love doing. And that was the case for me. I just didn't do it in traditional radio anymore. And it was a good thing that I walked away when I did, because when I went back to visit that town, the on-air shift that I had was eliminated. So I would have been vaporized anyhow.
You would have been vaporized by XM Radio. Thank you very much. By Mr. Howard Stern. Thank you very much. And I was in the call the other day, I realized that Howard Stern actually has his own radio station, and I believe that the local radio stations all across the country and local newspapers are dying because of XM radio, and because you can read newspapers. Let's say I'm in Aspen, Colorado, and you can read the LA Times online. So it's the point of you have to make a decision whether you're going to walk away gracefully or stick with it. And I know a lot of radio hosts locally, and they said the same thing. They go radio was so, is and was so lucrative that I finally had to switch positions.
Well, the thing with, and I know a little bit about radio, so the thing with radio in and of itself, people like Howard Stern, like him or love him, or like him or hate him, doesn't really matter, but people like Stern and people like Glenn Beck, who's another big talker, Bill O'Reilly, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, people like that, like him or hate him, they have realized, like you've realized probably, and like I've realized, that they can do their own stuff, they can create their own content, and they can build their own audience that's not the property of company XYZ. And so those talkers that I've mentioned, a lot of them are leaving the traditional media, number one, because it's a dying model. You already pointed that out. Brilliant. But also because they can create their own stuff and have it be kept in-house, proprietary. Like Glenn Beck, for instance, he actually lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as do I, Dallas-Fort Worth, that's in Texas. And Glenn not only quit CNN, but he also quit Fox News. Now, who in the heck quits those big heavy hitters? Well, he did because he realized that the writing was on the wall, and to continue to grow in his own success, he needed to just build his own studio and create his own content under his own guidance. And that's exactly what he did. And that's just not, and that's not exclusive to him. That's what people are doing. A lot of people are doing these days.
Interesting that people are starting to realize the power of podcasting, and people are starting to realize the power of creating their own content, not under CNN or not under MSNBC or not under XM radio, because the power of your own content, that's just something right there.
Absolutely. I think that I love podcasting as much as you do, Wynn, but I think the bigger picture is create your own stuff and figure out how to pipe it out and get it in as many people's earballs and eyeballs as possible. Yeah. And build your own stuff. So CNN doesn't own your content, or one of the companies that own your content, but you own it, and you can do with it what you please.
With it what you please, because when these big companies own it, they may not do what you want with it.
It's definitely possible.
Meaning they may take creative control.
Right.
That's why I never traditionally publish a book, because traditional publishers take creative control big time, and I'm like, nope, that's not going to work for me. And so under these big companies, even though we have these big news agencies like CNN, we have to be careful on what they allow us to say on national TV and what the public radio stations want us to say. I mean, I know as well as you do, you have to follow a script in public radio, don't you?
It's not quite like that. You don't have to be quite, or people don't have to be quite as skeptical as that. However, yeah, there are guidelines, but I personally, Wynn, have had a wonderful time being on television as a guest. I've been on TV about 100 times and talking about different things, talking about my books and things of that nature. And I've always had a good time. And there has never been a restriction put on what I wanted to talk about. And there was no conspiracy, by the anchors, by the producers, by the people that were in charge. Now, I know a lot of people kind of take some liberty with that, and they might talk about some type of media conspiracy. I don't believe that there is. If there is, I have not experienced it myself. And I've worked at many television stations and have been a guest on set in many studios. That doesn't mean that one doesn't exist, because there might be one somewhere. But it's not rampant, or at least I have not experienced it as such. But that could be just my own personal experience. But overall, what you said is true, that there are certain parameters and guidelines, but I think that's what you're speaking of is more of an exception than a rule. Again, my personal experience.
Well, that's good. That's good that you've not come across those guidelines yet, because
Right.
those guidelines are not helpful to the independent podcasters. Now, that's my next question. How do you feel coming from traditional radio into the podcasting space? How do you feel when NPR says these independent podcasters are not doing a very good job, and you know that site? So what's your opinion on that?
Very good. I don't really I may not be the best interview guest in the world for that particular question, because I don't really pay attention, and I don't really care what other producers are doing, TV, radio, or other forms of content. I care about what I'm doing. And I'm no superhero. So yeah, I do kind of sometimes see what other people are doing, and I'm human. So sometimes there's, a little bit of envy, a little bit of jealousy, but for the most part, I focus on my show, my content, the guests that I'm bringing in, and I try to create a better experience for my listener or viewer. Most of my stuff is audio, not video. But that's really what I focus most of my time on. Honestly, I don't know what's going on with NPR produced shows. I don't know. And I don't really care. And that's not a slam against NPR or any of those associated properties. That just means Joel is focused on creating the best content that he can for his audience, and try to build his tribe and his business.
Yeah.
And
I definitely
okay.
agree with you, Joel. I mean, I don't care what NPR says. I'm doing what I'm doing because we enjoy it.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And the same thing goes for national, regular television and network news. I work out first thing in the morning, and the TVs are on, and that is my only exposure to television. And I shield my eyes, frankly, literally, because I don't need to pollute my mind with picket signs and flashing red and blue lights and all that stuff that they parade on the morning news. So I literally shield my eyes, turn away, because I don't need that kind of input coming to me first thing in the morning. And because what I found is that it will zap my creativity and my motivation when I'm trying to.
That's why you do a great podcast without all that stuff in it, because we need to be creative as independent podcasters.
Absolutely. And our creativity is what makes podcasting a force to be reckoned with.
Yep, it does. I agree. And now, where can people find you, and where can people get a hold of you? And I know they can get a hold of you on the relaunchshow.com, which is a phenomenal podcast, you guys.
Thank you.
You should listen to it.
Yeah, thank you. Best thing to do is just visit our podcast page, sample the show. That would be the very first thing that I'd ask you to do is sample the show and tell me what you think. And you can go to relaunchshow.com/subscribe, and you can even do that on your iPhone. And it will give you a variety of options of of how you want to listen to the show, either through iTunes, through Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, some other options as well, one or two. And then just see if the show is useful for you, and if it is able to inspire and empower you, maybe give you an idea or two for building your next business or creating your next opportunity. And if it's helpful for you, then subscribe to the show, and let's connect on LinkedIn or Facebook, and we'll go from there. But I think that's just the best thing to do, is just for any content creator that you might be interested in, sample his or her show, read their blog, watch their video clip, check out their content, and that is how you get a very quick understanding of who they are, and then you can make your decisions on whether or not you would be that would be a good contact or a good fit for you to know that person.
What, Joel? Did you just jump into my brain and pull every word out of my mouth? Gee.
Yeah, pretty much.
You did infomercial for me on your interview. Geez, that is the best advice I've heard all day. That is the best advice I've heard since
thank you.
I started this podcast. Use other people's podcasts. Get a taste of other people's podcasts. Then in the iTunes app, you can download one episode, you guys, and just test it out and then see whether you like that host or you don't. And if you do, you can subscribe to them, obviously.
You bet.
But you don't have to necessarily subscribe to all podcasts under the sun.
Right. Well, a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, go to Facebook, go to LinkedIn, follow me," and it's like, no. See if I'm somebody. See if I or when or whomever. See if you like what they have to say and if they're worth following. And if they are, well then then connect with them. But time is at an all-time premium. So just choose wisely who you want to allow into your small circle.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so that's a great piece of advice for the podcast listeners out there that don't always pick the top podcast. Always pick the show you like.
Yep, sounds great.
Yep. And so, Joel, I'm actually going to turn the podcast mic over to you to let you ask me two to three questions that it can be about anything.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you. And Wynn, thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you today. What's been the most challenging thing for you in creating, developing, launching a show, a podcast show?
What's been the most challenging? Getting the leverage, and having the guests actually share their podcast episodes. I mean, I am still stuck I shouldn't say stuck. I am getting between 100 and 500 downloads per episode, and I'm hoping that will become more eventually. But
Sure.
getting the leverage is the most challenging thing known to man.
Have you? That's a great answer. Thank you for that. Are you familiar with the name Cliff Ravenscraft? Do you know that name?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. He's a good buddy of mine, and he was actually my first podcast coach years ago. And he and I were on a cruise, and we were both speakers on this cruise. This is a long time ago, and this is how we met. And one of the things that Cliff said is, even if you have 100 downloads, and he actually used that number, 100. He said, think about that. Picture a room with 100 people standing in it. That's a lot of people. And, those are people that are listening to what you have to say, that are hanging, I don't know if they're hanging on your words, but they're taking your advice, and they're contemplating and pondering what you're thinking about. So if you've got a room full of 100 to 500 people, I mean, that is gold, because those are people that, value what you have to offer and your opinion. And I said that because, no matter what the number is, and I don't know if there's a magic number, and I can appreciate that you're wanting to grow that auditorium, get more people in there, but you take very, very good care of the people that are listening, because that's your fan base, and people they need to be treated with care. But you already know that, Win. But I just felt like sharing that with you, because I remember Cliff shared that when we were having a group discussion, that some people that he was talking about would like, well, I only have X amount of subscribers, or I only have so and so listening to the show. So anyway, be of good cheer, because you are definitely doing something right.
Oh, geez. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. See, I didn't want to burst my own bubble, and you can thank the original podcast mentor for sharing that with you, because I'm like, now, I shouldn't say stuck, and I won't anymore after this.
Good.
Because, quite frankly, the 100 to 500 downloads, we're going to work on that, but we got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. And you have done more, Win, than most people will ever do. You pulled the trigger, and most people won't. Yeah. They'll talk about it, but they won't. And you know that as well as I do. But see, you are in the very top 3, 4, 5% of podcasters, content creators, because you've actually done it. And you've actually established an audience. It may not be the Super Bowl size audience yet, but there is an audience there. And find out why people are listening to you. What they're getting from your show, what they like about your show, what they don't like about your show. Those are painful questions sometimes, but if you work with the people that are already tuned in and listening, I mean, I had a coaching session. I was coaching one of my longtime clients, and we had this exact same discussion, that you got to treat your listeners like gold, regardless of if there's 1, 100, or 1,000, because gold breeds more gold.
And thank you for not bringing up John Lee Dumas. Like, nope, we're not at his level yet. You brought up one of the podcast, Answer Man, and I actually listened to his podcast as well. So
yeah, Cliff's awesome.
Know his voice. Cliff is awesome, and so every time Dick and Harry brings up John Lee Dumas, I'm like, I could not do another podcast with anyone that brings up John Lee Dumas, because that's all they think about in Australia. That's all they think about in podcasting.
Well, I mean, there's so much more
They
that's there.
get us at the bottom of the heap. And
Well, no, I wouldn't say it that way. I wouldn't say it that way. It's just a different approach, and your approach has to suit your personality, and that was a big learning experience for me. And once I got it to be more congruent with my message, not just my podcast, but the speaking that I do, that's something to really grow and develop. You can't copy somebody else's model and expect it to work the same for you as it did for that other person, regardless of what their name is or what their experience is. But you can learn from them, and you can take the best pieces of what they have to offer. But you've got to use your own secret sauce, and your secret sauce is actually the sauce that you offer, not that other people offer.
Yep. And so that's the best advice you can give anyone, and I'm taking your advice to heart, Joel. You know
awesome.
that. And
Good.
I agree with you. If you have one download is fine. If you have 100, that's fine too. But treat everyone like gold, and that will result in more gold.
Absolutely. If you sow into the people that are already there, then you'll reap the benefits.
Yep.
But if you don't, it's just like a flower. If you don't water it, it will go away.
Yes. Terrific analogy.
Sure.
So I just now I just have to take what you said to heart, and I'll no more saying stuck in 500 downloads. Today is the last day, and if I say that again, you knock me over the head with a saucepan.
Well, I'm not going to have to because you're not going to say that anymore. You're going to throw your shoulders back and stick your chest out, and you're going to be proud of that number, because how many people have that number? I mean, think about it. People would kill for that, because people they want to do the podcast, but first of all, most won't. Number one. Number two, most will quit soon after if they do actually pull the trigger. And Cliff is a nerd, and he knows all the stats and the exact numbers to the 10th decimal place on how many people give up after 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, give or take, and how many don't. So Cliff could go deep on that, but the fact of the matter is most people won't, and the people that do, the lion's share of those people will quit. So if you do those two things, get started, stick with it, I mean, you're already ahead.
Yes, and people think it's difficult having a podcast with a disability. It's really not, you guys. It's really not. If you want to be passionate about something, be passionate about something. But as Joel and I will tell you, you have to be passionate about your show. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and your audience will know that you're not passionate about it. So definitely do something that you're passionate about. Don't confuse passion with knowledge.
Don't confuse passion with knowledge. And yep, that is one well-spoken podcaster to another. And
thank you.
Yes, you guys, I'm going to now be proud of my download numbers, and took me 4 years to be proud of my download numbers, and let's celebrate the huge successes. And before I let you go, Joel, do you have any more questions for me?
This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad that we were able to do it like this, not as an interview, but more as two friends sitting down, because I really think that that's when the best stuff comes out, when we just get to talk, and then other people get to listen in. Hopefully, we answer some questions that are on their minds, and that we provided some value in our conversation. But I've enjoyed this time. Just thank you. I think that about does it. Really, I just need a commitment from you, Wynn, that number one, you won't give up, and number one, that you will hold your head up, regardless of what other people may or may not be doing with their show and business.
I will.
Okay.
Starting today, I will be a proud podcaster, and you guys, all my fans, have witnessed everything now. Both
Awesome.
my physical relaunch and my relaunch to get a journalism degree, and as Joel said, I need to be proud about it, and I'm going to be proud about it.
Good. Fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the honor and privilege of being here. I'm so glad that we were finally able to make this happen. But just don't be a stranger, and just let me know how I can continue to support you. And friends, new friends, thank you for listening to our conversation today.
Well, thank you. And as I said, Joel's podcast is amazing, and I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode of Butterflies and Wisdom. This podcast is sponsored not only by Grace by Grit, it's sponsored by Kidder. Kidder is a hashtag social media tool that you guys can use on Twitter. And Grace by Grit is a clothing line out of California. Grace by Grit is giving you guys 20% off on all their athletic clothing. And also, this podcast is sponsored by Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly is a soon-to-be author and hopefully soon to be podcaster. She's a wellness coach. So I would like to throw a huge shout out to all my sponsors, and let's keep this ball rolling, and go tune into Joe's show, and I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks to you guys.
All the best, Wynn. Bye-bye.